Hi, ever wonder what it's like to work another profession or live in the underworld? Listen to unsuspecting riders give a 10 to 15 minute personal masterclass as I spontaneously interview them as they enter my taxi. I'm your host, Simon Rushton, and this is Taxi Chronicles. Morning. Yes, we're back with another episode, another rider, another story. Today we have the Trinidadian moral man all the way from the loving islands in the Caribbean. So he's a man who's more or less after my own heart, in the sense that my ancestry is Jamaican. Obviously, we won't go into the whole slave boat thing, but we're probably all on the same boat at some time or other. Yeah. But anyway, he works in a hospice. I've only just learned about that, so excuse me for the ignorant questions when we're doing this interview. But he's going to tell us what it's like to work in a hospice, how he got into the industry, and probably give us snippets about moving from Trinidad, the lovely island, Caribbean in the sun, to the cold, grey, gloomy, bad food, bad weather, bad teeth country of England. But anyway, nice to have you here today, Gary.
Nice to be here. This is an unexpected experience, but I'm all happy to go with it.
So tell us, how did you get into the hospice business? Furthermore, before we go there, how long you been in the country? What was the Caribbean life like?
Okay.
Why did you come here? Was it for love? Was it for work and money like everybody else?
So I've only been here 30 years.
30 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a lot of hair when I came over. I'm now bald almost.
Okay.
So I had a plan, an agenda, which was to come over here. I was in the hydrological field, which is just monitoring rainfall, stream flow, and just climatic changes in the Caribbean. And I thought that if I did nursing, it would be an opportunity to then move to the States, because at that time, way back in ancient times, they only did degrees in hydrology at master's level, and the easiest place to move to was Arkansas in the States, because they offered it as a first degree, and also you could work if you had nurse training from the UK. So I had a plan. Mm-hmm. I had never done nursing before. As I said, I worked in the hydrological field, which is an engineering field in Trinidad, till 1990 when I left.
That's a big jump, though.
Very big jump, but I thought my plan was always to continue in the same field. So I started my nurse training in Buckinghamshire, which was very different to Trinidad in lots of ways. And I started in winter, so it was a big learning curve.
So just to get this right, you're doing a hydrological engineering, which is basically water measurement
and water wells, various forms of water.
I understand. So they're basically the world's most precious natural resource.
Yeah.
And then you wanted to go to America, but you decided to come to England first.
Yeah.
So you can bunny hop, jump to America later.
Precisely, it was like a stepping stone plan to make sure I had the capacity to work legally and to survive, as well as study in the States. So that was my long-term plan at that time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I came over here, culture shock, because the job I had meant that my week was made up of taking a 4x4 vehicle with a colleague and driving to various parts, rural, the tropical rainforests, hillsides, beachsides, all the rivers, measuring flow, measuring rainfall gauges. So it was not an indoor job. Mm-hmm. And I never thought I would do an indoor job very well. Anyway, so it was a big jump to then being on a ward and training and looking after people and sort of nurse's role. And I didn't expect to be good at it. I didn't think I would not like it, because I thought, I always at home would look after my older relatives if needed, and help out in any way I can. But I did really well, and I was very surprised. I was really good at it in the academic side, as well as the feedback from the wards, the placements I was on. yeah, and I had planned to move on and hopefully get a job or get 1 year experience before I moved on. But then, unfortunately, if anybody is old enough to remember the early 90s when suddenly there was a change. So the reason I was allowed to come to train in the UK was because we were then, we were still a part of the Commonwealth, and they were very eager, even up until 1990, to have students to arrive from the Caribbean and other Commonwealth countries. We worked on the wards, we were counted in the numbers, we paid taxes. Nobody gave us a free ride. Despite being students, we didn't have any grants or anything. We had to earn your living to survive. You'd pay your taxes. They introduced council tax or poll tax. We still had to pay that. But then Mrs. Thatcher, if I'm correct, had decided to stop giving work permits to any non-British person, and even in nursing, despite the shortages, they refused to issue us. So a lot of us either had to go back home when we finished our 3.5 years training, or work in the private sector in nursing homes. I then worked in a nursing home after I qualified in Oxfordshire, run by a Malaysian businessman who had various things, and it was a private care home. Basically, you worked like a slave constantly, and I don't know if that man is around still. He may have died by now. I think his businesses have changed hands, which is probably for the better, because he only hired non-British nurses to work for him, and he would hold your passport for 6 months and tell you had to pay a bond per month so you wouldn't run away when you got your work permit, and you'd be on call duty 1 in 3, or if you were a senior nurse, which I became eventually, every other week, which meant you had to be available 7 days a week at the drop of a hat. There was no life.
This was in England?
In England, in Oxfordshire, in a village called Merton, near Bicester.
Surely isn't that against the working...
No, it is. Believe it or not, in those people actually got away with it, yeah? But we didn't. A lot of people, 1 or 2 people challenged it, because he held this bond, he'd give you back your passport and you'd have to fight for your... And in those days, it might not seem like a lot of money now, but he would take £100 a month from your salary. And trust me, as a newly qualified nurse in 1994-95, as a bond, so you wouldn't run away.
Oh, okay.
Because people would disappear at night. Honestly, it was like you could have made a film about this. Anyway, thank goodness that practice stopped. The law has changed, but we went through all of us were nurses from Commonwealth countries, like either African continent, Malaysia, the Caribbean, and it was sometimes quite depressing. We had our own ways of keeping ourselves positive and moving forward, but it was hard. It was really hard, and there was he would blame us, he would threaten us that if any patients develop pressure sores or whatever, it'll be on our backs and we'll be sued, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that was another steep learning curve for me. I left there being the senior nurse in charge of one of the units. He was begging me to stay when I was ready to go, but at that point my life changed. I had to move on.
What did you say to him when he asked you to stay?
I tell him no, because I think I need to go where I think I need to be and where I'm valued.
You didn't tell him, so you didn't tell him that his work environment is disgusting.
No, so what I did, which I thought was a bigger blow, because he was that sort of angry, shouty man, and that kind of words would just rile him up into being stupid or not listening. So what I did a few times when he threatened us, because he used to eavesdrop on the phone calls we would make too, I got onto the RCN and invited them to come and talk to the nurses to help educate us on the best practice. Mm-hmm. And within seconds he was running down the stairs saying, "Oh gosh, Gary, I didn't mean that," blah blah blah. And I just want to make sure the nurses that I'm meant to be managing are safe and our patients get the best care. So he couldn't really have stopped the RCN members from coming in and providing us with support and training. So hopefully I did something good. Mm-hmm. But it was, as I said, a challenging time, Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a life learning that I didn't expect then. So I moved on. I decided to leave nursing for a little while. I went into, I felt drawn to, it might sound really old-fashioned or not the norm today, but I went into a kind of religious life. I considered joining a religious order, which was a a nursing order as well. They were like monks, and the premise, their whole charism was the love of Christ compels us, and it was really the spirituality of the dying. It was a community that was founded way back in the days of the Black Plague, and they would bury the dead, look after the bereaved, all the families, all the children, or the wives, or whoever was left behind, and transport them. And they grew into a community, and they chose a kind of not very well-known saint called Saint Alexis, who's a mythological saint anyway. So I did that, but they also had nursing homes and care homes, and I thought they gave really good care. It was really holistic care, and I joined them. And when I was with them, I was on my journey. I was first a postulant, living with the community and seeing how things go and working on the wards. Then I became a novice. I moved to London, and I still journey with them, went on various theological courses, etc. And I knew it wasn't for me by 2000, but I left with good terms with them. I still visit them now and then. They were really people who tried to help. They weren't perfect. They were human like every other human or whatever type of family we have. But I also applied then for a job at, say, the hospice I work at now, because what was... I hadn't realized at the time, but the same motto of the monks that I was going to join is the same motto of the hospice.
You sure they're not connected?
No, they're not connected. No. One is by a totally different order of nuns that started, religious sisters in the hospice that I work at is the oldest in Europe. It's probably one of the oldest modern hospices in the world. It's about over 105 years old. And 5 nuns started it to look after the vulnerable in the community then. They weren't really palliative care based or any looking after one group of people. They looked after the whole community, and they've grown since. They were given the land by a Jewish family, and right now we look after people of all faiths, non-faiths, believers, non-believers, anybody. Once you live in any of the boroughs we cover, we look after you. We respect your dignity, whatever you want to do. We don't preempt anything. We support people. We journey with people. And
so it's a charity?
Yes.
Okay.
So the nuns had made it more of an independent charity. They agreed for it to be an independent charity a few years ago. So it's sort of parallel to the ones who started, but not governed by them anymore. Mm-hmm. So or they have a certain input, but it's kind of mainly led by a group of trustees. But it's been an amazing experience. I worked there for 5 years. I left because I was moving house, but I started on the wards, moved to the day hospice, and then the community teams covering City and Hackney and Tower Hamlets. I left there, as I said, because of geographical changes to my location, and then I worked in North London as a COPD nurse. Then I was drawn back to palliative care and joined the local palliative care team in the borough. And then I was studying more. I was doing my physical and clinical assessment courses and my non-medical prescribing courses. I moved to Newham as a community matron, moved back to another borough in London.
So you've got an extensive experience in the medical field.
Hopefully.
Do you miss the high job?
I do, because
that sounds great to me.
Well,
going around the 4x4. The only thing I'm missing is a weapon. You're missing is a weapon.
Oh no! Well, listen, you'd have to for the snakes and all the crazy things you'd come across too.
It'd be great. That's all adventure,
but
isn't it?
It was. But the difference, so the similarities in a weird kind of way, is that I have never had a job in a hospital, sitting on a ward or whatever. I always work in the community, going to see people.
So tell us,
I'll do some of it.
Sorry, what's a typical day like for you now?
Typical day, we start off, we have a handover meeting where we address any incoming calls from patients or relatives or other healthcare professionals overnight. We make sure we address those early in the day. We have people referred to us. We kind of rag them as to how urgently they need us, whether they need a nurse and a doctor or a nurse alone, etc. We visit people, we discuss how we could help support them either with symptom management, psychological support. We even have welfare benefits advisors at the hospice and social workers, whether people want to be admitted for either symptom management or planned respite, or unfortunately, we do have people who come into the hospice to die and their days there. And unfortunately, a lot of the local community know the hospice just for that. And we've grown so much. So many people come in more now just to manage their symptoms, to stabilize them when they go home, because a lot of more people are choosing, especially since during the pandemic, to die at home with their family around them. So yeah, it's been a challenging year, but hopefully we've made a difference.
I asked you earlier,
Yeah.
do you get numb to death? Because you must have a lot of people who die around you. And you told me...
Well, no, because, I think everybody's journey is so individual. And, one thing I've learned, especially this year, is that there's so much to learn. And every journey we make is a privilege to be on.
Okay.
And some patients never leave you.
In what sense?
Well,
Their spirit,
their attitude to life, the way they would just be so strong and prepared to face death with their dignity.
I have to say it because you didn't say it. You said it to me, but you didn't say it on the tape.
Okay.
What Gary said, I said, do you get numb to death? And he said, and in the respect that it's just another number, it doesn't matter anymore. And he said no. If he got to that stage, he has to leave his job.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very, very moral.
Well,
because it shows that he does it from the heart. He's a good guy. And I would never have left a hydraulic in the jungle career to come to England to work and help people die or whatever. But, you're a better man than I am in that department.
I don't know about that, sir. I think we all have our journey and we just don't know where we'll be taken or called or whatever. And it has been such a journey. Especially this has been a very challenging year for us. Very, very challenging.
How so?
Well, a lot of patients or people who were referred to us didn't want us to visit them at home because they were so worried about getting the virus. And unfortunately, then they became so symptomatic, they tried to go into hospital. And when they went in, their relatives couldn't visit them. That was really upsetting. So at the hospice, even when patients came in to us, we always allowed a certain time frame for them to visit. We kept them as safe and they wore appropriate protection, and we sanitize and we check temperatures, but we were really disturbed when we found out that a lot of patients were dying on their own.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah,
And that was hard for some of the relatives, and a lot of them remember it still. So we found that the demand on our psychological and counseling services had gone up significantly during it too. Yeah.
So what does the future hold for Gary?
Well, hopefully a few days of rest and just reflection. I always think we should take advantage of, but maybe I'm just old now, this time of the year is to stay with as close as you can to your family and reflect on the year that has just passed and see how best to move forward in the new year. But I'm old now, so maybe that's just sounding boring, but
No, you are entitled and to do what you believe in, which is great. Family is always great. So that's what it's about.
Yeah.
What have you learned throughout this whole thing?
Make the most of every day.
I agree with that.
Make the most. You don't know when, you don't know how. And don't ever take people, especially your family, for granted.
Someone said to me yesterday, I think at the end of the interview, that never let an opportunity pass you.
True, so true.
I never actually thought of that.
Yeah.
But it's very true. Never let an opportunity pass you. Always go for gold.
Sure. Yeah.
In that respect.
Yeah.
At least you've tried. If you failed, and if you succeed, well, good luck to you, and more power to you in that respect. Last question. What's the impact you want to have in the world?
Impact.
I think you've already had an impact.
I don't know about that. So that's a good question. Well, I won't say a good, but it's a interesting and a hard question right now. And I'll tell you why. So I just wanted to always make sure that this is going to be hard. Whatever I could do to help somebody would be similar to what people would do for my parents.
I like that. I really like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, a few weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, my dad died at home.
I'm sorry to hear that.
That's okay. And I, of course, was over here, and I couldn't be there to look after him.
He wasn't alone, was he?
Well, he was in hospital, and it was it distressed him a lot. He couldn't talk. He had several strokes. But thank goodness he came home, and my family, my mom and my sister did an amazing job. He died within 48 hours of being home, but he always wanted to die at home. He didn't want any strangers looking after him. And you know what? He was a grumpy old man, but he got his wish. And the only thing for me is I wish I was there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I understand. Well, thanks for that.
That's all right. Thanks for listening.
No, don't worry. Just a change. I'm intrigued about this jungle and this hydraulic. I know this is like a bonus section. Yeah, you're giving us a bonus section, kind of finishing on an adventurous note. Tell us, what is it like?
It was amazing. So 6 o'clock, and just remember, I'm talking about in a Trinidad setting where 6 o'clock in the morning is 25 degrees, so it's not cold. You get into work, you load up the vehicle with your equipment. So we had equipment to measure the flow of rivers. And really, whoever you're working with that day, you either collect them en route or they'd be at the office. You get the vehicle started, you fill up the petrol in the station, and you hit the road. You're driving 90 miles to wherever you have to go, either on the coast or by rivers or in the forest. You're looking out for snakes if you're walking through tracks to get to rain gauges in high areas. And if you finish, we'd start early because we always had an agenda. By 2 o'clock, if we finished all our work, you'd stop off and have a nice swim in a crystal clear river, or by the coast, by the beach. Yeah, so it was just a nice way to interface with the nature. Well, we had caimans, and that was also funny because...
You had what?
Caimans. So caimans are like small alligators. They have a flatter snout. Yeah? We have lots of caimans.
How big are they?
Not that big. About
take your arm off.
5. Yeah, they could do you some damage. But, you know... It was part of the adventure. Listen, I was in my 20s. It was an adventure. You know, who else could drive around all day, jumping in and out of rivers or walking through rainforest, checking rain gauges? And so that was the positive. That was the kind of...
Did you ever get bit or attacked by any...
No, I almost got attacked by a caiman, and once we had a few snakes on branches we had to be mindful of.
Will you eat him?
Pardon?
Did you eat him?
No.
Have you eaten one?
Yeah. No, not snakes.
Really?
Yeah.
Can't you eat them? You must be able to eat them.
Nah.
Cut your head off, disembowel him?
Possibly, but I think, to be honest, from what I know, is a rubbery kind of meat, from what I've been told.
It must be, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, one thing that we would come across would be a few hunters hunting something called a manikou or a guti or iguana, and I have to confess, I've eaten iguana. Iguana was very much like chicken.
Iguana. Oh, yeah. Okay. There's nothing wrong with eating it. If you eat it.
No. The others are fine. Just the iguana is kind of endangered now, you see, because it was overhunted.
Yeah, but there's a difference
back in the day, it was alright.
Eating it locally.
Yeah.
Because you're hungry, and farming it off to some Western country.
Yeah, no.
That's different because the Western people, you know, they exploit, they all these.
Yeah, it's like some kind of delicacy kind of crazy.
But you're just hungry, and it's your equivalent to chicken.
Yeah, but so that's probably what the closest I had, and I may have had a guti again. But yeah, it was just the sort of job that you would get up easily in the morning and go to. For me anyway, but I suppose that's why I do the job outdoors now, visit people at home. Sitting behind a desk was never for me.
No, I agree with that. I can only do this job.
Yeah.
So I'm meeting different people, and the fact that I do the interviewing now, makes the day fly. I can do 18 hours, no problem.
Geez, yeah.
Because you're doing so many interviews, you're hearing people's stories, hearing some stories you just don't want to hear.
Yeah,
you're like,
pretty much.
Why did I go down that rabbit hole? Please back up. You know, you're like a tunnel rat in the Vietnam War. You got down the tunnel, you realise who's on the other end, and you're like, pull me out!
No, it's mad times like that.
But yeah, it's been interesting. So you've come across some dangerous creatures.
Yeah, I've had a few adventures with vehicles on flooded roads in the rainy season or by a bridge measuring the flow and all sorts of things. But
so you've got to go when the water's violent and it's monsoon. I see you have monsoon era.
Well, we have kind of rainy season, which our hurricanes.
Yeah, so you have to be out there at that time.
Yeah, so we used to have, you'd stay in a house in one part of the island and with the equipment, so you'd have big weights with a kind of rotating device to measure the flow, and you'd have to stand on a bridge with that hanging over on a pulley.
With you on it.
Yeah, so
it was. You wear rubber boots?
Yeah, we had the full waist, high waist kind of boots.
Like a fisherman's.
Yeah. So
you must be sweating heavy in that.
Definitely. I hated to put those on.
So why would you wear it then?
Mainly if the water was really high and you need to get a flow. So you wouldn't go if it's above your head, but if it was like 4 feet and pushing, or 3 feet, because the short boots would be too shallow. It was just to keep you dry as much as possible. Waders, we had waders.
But if you're sweating, does it matter?
Well, it should. The whole procedure should take you less than half an hour to measure the flow if it's a not too wide a river. So it was just all dependent on the size of the river you wanted to measure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was just really interesting. The boring bits, not boring, but the kind of other bit was going back to the office and putting all that computer on the front programs to get estimations and guesstimations of annual rainfall and stream flow and groundwater and all sorts. And the other exciting bit, just to say, is we used to supervise the drilling of water wells, and I was normally on night duty, and that was interesting.
Why?
Every 5 foot that you drill, you had 2 big mud pits, one that it used to settle in and go back into the pump. But the other one, you'd have to go in and look at the whatever rock formation you were cutting through and identify it, so you'd know.
It's like a big borehole test.
Yeah, but you'd stay till they drill the well to a few hundred feet and monitor every 5 foot.
100 feet?
A few hundred,
What's the diameter of the well?
It would depend. So they'd start off with one size, like a certain bore, like 14 inches, 16 inches. But if they needed to develop the well, they'd increase the top area to sit a pump on top, So
it's a well for a pump, not a well for a bucket.
No, this is a proper, like hitting a water table with, through aquifers. Yeah. So it was interesting.
So it's not a borehole well. What do you call it?
Just looking to hit an aquifer.
Yeah. So it's an underwater table.
Yeah.
Reservoir.
Yeah. So and you're hoping that's going to be sustainable. So yeah, that was kind of another adventurous kind of bit too.
And the water's fresh water?
Sometimes it would need to be treated, but generally it was in the Caribbean. You'd normally find that you might have a certain amount of sodium or sulfur in it at certain points, but most of it was drinkable, but you still need to treat it.
What does the sulfur do to the human body?
It's not good. It can affect cells, and just the way your whole body makeup is a bit of a toxin to get rid of from your liver and your kidney.
Okay, so if you drank too much of that,
it wouldn't be good for you.
Yeah. I understand.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, but all in all.
Okay.
But thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks a lot for that. Much appreciated. We hope you liked that interview. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to get the latest daily episode. Ever considered investing in the continent with the fastest growing economy and population on Earth? The same continent that holds 30% of the world's known natural resources? Then listen to our sister podcast, Africa Investor Stories, where you will hear real investors with real stories from around the world share their experience of investing in Africa. We post Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m.